What is up, guys? My name is Augustine from DFO, also known as DebatableFootballOpinions on Instagram, and I'm back with another video. I know you guys have been waiting for me to do the Euros predictions, the Copa America analysis on a lot of clubs, but I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to do the complete opposite, and I'm going to be doing the one thing that literally no one requested. I'm going to be talking about my favorite football books of all time. I have quite a handful here. I have about 7. If you guys don't know, I read quite a lot. In the back of my videos, there's usually a lot of books right there in the background, and a lot of those books are football books that I've read throughout the years. And I've come across some really good ones, but the books in this list are the ones that I really enjoyed, and I'm gonna let you guys know some of them, and I'm also gonna leave my all-time favorite book at the end so you guys can see which one it is. But yeah, my point of the video is to show you guys my collection, and I know that not a lot of people read football books or books to begin with. So if by the end of the video one of these books interests you and maybe you end up getting one of them and read a little bit of it, my goal will be completed. I'm just trying to show you my collection. Hopefully it'll interest you. All right, so let's get it going. First, I got these 2 books, and I'm showing them together because they're about the same player. They're 2 Lionel Messi books. I'm going to start off with this one, and then I'm going to move on to the bigger one. This one is called Messi. It's by Leonardo Fazio. And this one's an interesting one because it came out in about 2012, and the book is divided in 3 different parts. It's divided in 3 different years: 2009, 2010, 2011. You may think that's not much, but that just happens to be Barcelona's prime years, whenever they did very good under Pep Guardiola. And this book actually covers a little bit more than that. It actually manages to get a hold of some of Messi's important people in his life from his childhood, like some people that lived in his same city as he was born, some people from his school. So you get a little bit of fun information, a lot of interesting stuff. I would say if you wanted to start reading a football book and you really like Messi, this is the book to go because it's very short. It's only not even 200 pages, but that's Messi by Leonardo Fazio, and we're gonna move on to the other Messi book. This one is completely different despite being about the same player. This is called Messi Grafica, and it's a lot different. It covers a lot more information because this was published in 2017, so you got a lot of his career rather than the other book. And the thing about this book is that it covers a lot of stats from the beginning of Messi's career to the end. It doesn't really try to go the whole biography route as the other book. It doesn't try to dive too much into his childhood, his family, but it kind of just dives into his career. It kind of just describes how his career went, a lot of stats. If you open this book, if I open this book at a random page, you'll see a lot of stats, a lot of graphics, and I mean, that's what the book is called. It's called Messi Graphic. But yeah, this book, if you are into stats and you just want to revisit the whole Messi career and what he's achieved up until 2017, this is the book to go to. I really enjoyed it, and despite it being kind of long, I finished it very quickly. It's just a very easy book to read. I really enjoyed it. We're gonna move on to another biography. Okay, let's do this. We're putting Messi aside and we're gonna go for another player. We're gonna go for Zlatan, my story on and off the pitch. This actually happens to be the first football book that I've ever read, and it was so good that I think it's what kind of drove me to read a lot more. This is an autobiography written by David Lagercrotz. I'm pretty sure I messed the name up, but it's written down here. This book is so interesting because we all know Zlatan as the cocky, arrogant, humongous ego, because that's how the media portrays him. And I mean, it makes sense because that's the way he portrays himself. That's the way he shows himself to the world. But this book gives you kind of a perspective to, first of all, his childhood, how he became the player and the person he is now. And it shows you a side of Zlatan that the media or himself don't show you. It shows a little bit of his humble side. It shows a little bit of him overcoming obstacles. Like we know, Zlatan has been around everywhere, a lot of teams. He struggled in Juventus when they got relegated to Serie B and he needed a way out of there. This book tells that story. He struggled in Barcelona under Pep Guardiola. They just didn't like each other from the beginning. This book tells that story. Basically, almost every club that he's been to, all the stories are covered right here, and it's great. The one complaint that I have with the book is that it was published before he made it to PSG, so we don't get to hear his stories when he moved to PSG, when he went to the MLS, when he went to Manchester United, or when he made his return to Milan. A lot of stories that I definitely would have loved to read. But anyways, I really liked the book. Would totally recommend it. It was the first book that I read. Loved it. We're going to move on to the next player / manager. Andrea Pierlo, I think, therefore I play. It's written by Alessandro Alciato. Damn, these names are killing me. But it's an autobiography, and I really like it. We all know that Pierlo is kind of like a genius on and off the pitch. And this book is so interesting because you read it from his perspective. You are being told all these stories, and you're thinking about it with the Pierlo brain that he has. He's a genius on and off the pitch, and this book helps you see the way he sees things. We all remember that famous quote that by Pierlo. It's actually written down here. I don't feel pressure. I spent the afternoon of Sunday, July 9th, 2006, the night of the World Cup final in 2006, in Berlin, eating, sleeping, and playing the PlayStation. In the evening, I went out and I won the World Cup. As we know, Pierlo is just a very cool character, very smart. That's what helped him be the player that he is. It also tells a lot of great stories about his move from, Milan, Inter, Juventus, and when he won the World Cup in 2006, when he lost the Champions League final after that Liverpool comeback. A lot of great stories here, and you all get to read it from Pirlo's perspective pretty much. But we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on from players, and we're gonna talk about football moments that need to be in a book. And what's the best football moment in recent years? Leicester City, the inside story of England's unlikeliest champions. The book is told by Harry Harris, and this might just be my favorite book if you take out the one that I'm going to talk about later. This book is so goddamn amazing. We all know the story of Leicester City. I don't need to tell you what they did. I'm going to tell you the way. They won the Premier League despite the odds of them winning was 5,000 to 1, despite them almost getting relegated the year before. This book tells you this story as no other Leicester City book, because there are many, will. This book literally goes week by week, game by game. It literally starts the story on game number 1. It finishes on game number 38. So you don't just get to hear how amazing and glorious the Leicester City achievement was, but you get to live it once again because you start the story on game number 1. You get to see everyone's reaction to how they started the season. You get everyone's reaction to whenever they were in the middle of the season, whenever they were still going, and then right at the end as well. Everything. You get to live it again. Also, this book does a really good job at telling everyone's story, because we know Mahrez, Vardy, Ranieri, a couple other players were kind of like the big stars of this Leicester City team. But this book doesn't just give them a highlight. This book gives a highlight to a lot of players that kind of get put in the shadows, like Okazaki, Ulloa, a lot of board members from Leicester City, Drinkwater, Schmeichel, Conte. There's a lot of players that, because of Mahrez and Vardy's achievements, don't get that much spotlight, but not saying that they should get as much, but they still should get a little bit of spotlight, and this book definitely covers it. This book covers everyone's perspective, okay? And the one last thing I gotta say about this book, it has a lot of great stories that happened throughout the year of Leicester winning the title. You guys probably know the story of how Leicester City once scored a goal and the audience just kind of went crazy celebrating, and it actually created a 0.3 earthquake in the city of Leicester City. This book tells that story. You guys probably know there's a handful of people who actually bet on Leicester City to win the Premier League title before the season even started. Now, what happened to those people? Did they cash out? Did they go all the way? How much did they win? This story tells it. This story manages to get an interview of the people who actually bet on Leicester City. A lot of great fun stories, and you get to relive the whole Leicester City experience once again. It's probably my second favorite book on the list, and like altogether of all my football books I've ever read. We're gonna move on to a really controversial book before we get to my favorite one. Next up is The Expected Goal Philosophy by James Tippett. If you follow modern football, especially with football Instagram, football Twitter, you'll see that nowadays the football audience is kind of divided between two parts. You got the people who are beginning to be very into stats, and I'm not just talking goals and assists, I'm talking about very advanced stats that show whether a player is succeeding, is failing, all this stuff. There's like people writing threads with a bunch of numbers that will let you know if a player is good or bad. All this stuff. And like there's all these new stats getting implemented in today's game, all that. So there's the people who are appreciating those stats, using them, learning about them, and just see them as a good thing. And then on the other side, you got kind of the more traditional viewers who just want to watch the game for what it is. They still want to compare players, rate people however they want to do it, but they're not going to use stats. They're not going to use progressive carries per 90 in the final third type of thing. They'll just watch the game, and that's it. They close their mind to stats. So I don't know what kind of viewer you are. It's obviously not so black and white. There's some people in the middle. But this book actually tells a story of how expected goals and also expected assists comes into play, how it began, why it's succeeding, why is it important, how managers and teams have used expected goals stats to succeed. It also talks about how modern football will have more stats, more information, more stuff like this in the future, and that it's kind of inevitable. The one thing I will give this book a lot of credit for is that as it tells a story, it kind of talks about the faults and the bad thing about using expected goals. Expected goals is not perfect, and this book tells you why. This book is kind of trying to persuade you into why using stats is good, but it also will be honest with you and be like, hey, expected goals is not perfect. There's a lot of flaws that happen by it. I don't want to get into this too much, but there's a lot of things I could say about expected goals. I could say a lot of things about why it's a good thing, and I could say a couple about why it doesn't really work. But this book will tell you everything that you need to know. I would say if you're into stats, definitely get it. If you're not into stats, get it. just to kind of understand the other point of view. Look, I try not to get too much into the whole stats number thing. I get to it to an extent, and I read this book with the purpose of informing myself, not to be persuaded. I read it with a grain of salt, and I just took whatever information I wanted without trying to be persuaded. Read it just to learn. You know, it doesn't hurt to learn. So we're gonna move on. Very controversial book. I know a lot of people on Stat Football Twitter will have a lot to say about this one, but we're gonna move on to my all-time favorite book. How is this not gonna be my favorite football book? We have Maradona, the autobiography of soccer's greatest and most controversial star, Diego Maradona. This book is an autobiography told by Maradona, translated by Marcelo Mora and Araujo. How do I explain this book and how do I tell you why it's my favorite? Obviously, Maradona is my favorite player of all time before his passing. Like, for a long time, I'm Argentinian, as you can see by the flag. Favorite player of all time. I read this before his passing about 2 years ago. It covers all of Maradona's career, most controversial moments. You guys know Maradona has a lot of controversy in his careers, a lot of his moments, a lot of things he says. He never really quiets down. If he has something to say, he'll say it out loud without caring about the repercussions. He's done a lot of controversial stuff throughout his whole career, and this book tells all the stories. Hand of God, goal of the century, his Napoli career, his stop at Barcelona, the whole drug thing and how he was banned from international football, his famous fight with Atletico Bilbao, everything. And I do mean everything will be listed here. And why is it my favorite book? Sure, these stories are interesting as it is, but when I read this book, I really, like, if I'm sitting down in this room reading it, it literally feels like Maradona is telling his stories to me. It literally feels like I'm sitting in a room with Maradona and he's narrating the book himself. I mean, that's to be expected of an autobiography, but to me, it just feels so much. Maybe I'm just biased because he's my favorite player, but this is my favorite book because it really feels like I just have Maradona sitting next to me telling me his life, his career, his legacy. And we all know his legacy is tremendously, insanely big. So it's a story that you're gonna wanna know. And that's why this is my favorite book, but those other books in the list are not too bad either. So if one of these books manages to interest you, I would suggest you get them and see where that takes you. I started reading football books about 5 years ago. I have a lot more in the list. Some of them I didn't enjoy. I'm gonna start some new ones soon. I have the Cristiano Ronaldo biography. I have the Alex Ferguson biography. I have a couple others in the works, but the video is pretty much done. I will see you very, very soon. I have some more videos coming up. I have the Euros and Copa America predictions. So don't forget to subscribe and also turn on the little post notification thingy-majingy. As always, thank you all so much for the support that I get on both Instagram and YouTube every single day. And I'll see you guys in the next time. Thank you for watching. Take care and cheers.